Good contrast, data analytics and cast in stone. Let's start with a quiz. Who really first time problematized caste? Any answers? There are no prizes, huh? Everybody knows the caste in India has been a biggest menace. Marx said that it's the greatest impediment in India's progress and power. That was way back in 1853. That was the expected answer. It was Marx who really problematized caste first. Mahatma Phule in India is credited being the first person who really did it. He was a social worker, everybody knows. I don't need to introduce Phule as such, but he came onto the scene somewhere later than that, something like 1.5 decade later than that. All he wrote, etc., actually dates something like the late 60s and until he died. So it was the first that Marx actually problematized. Baba Sahib Ambedkar again said that turn in any direction you like and cast this the monster that would cross your path. There is no reform, political as well as economic, possible unless you kill this monster. So he's the first person actually making a state that caste be annihilated, and so was Marx. That unless the castes are actually done away with, India would not attain its progress in power. Paradoxically, these people actually are placed against each other. So that's the very unfortunate thing. Like you take stock of or talk to any so-called Ambedkarite, and he would say that we could do anyway, meaning we can be allied with anybody, but not Marx. They will not touch Marx with a barge pole. Not the Karl Marx as such, but the Marxist. So this is the kind of thing. Now, what is actually one could see what is the prowess of caste in menacing things. Literally, as we have come to now 21st century and we're marching now almost a decade is, a century is elapsed after Ambedkar had started his movement, and still what we see today is that India is perhaps more casteized than ever before. It might be very provocative for many people, but today, if you see, India is more casteized than it was ever before. Very uncritically and lazily, we keep on saying that, oh, caste have really oppressed people for couple of millennium, not to go by Hindutva way and make it something like something like lakhs of years before and all that thing. I would not say that, but that's what actually gets resounded, that oh, for times immemorial we have been oppressed, etc., etc. That is the song done. But it's almost something like 2000 years this institution has been around and been actually menacing the lower caste people. How does it happen? The cast in stone, the heading, the topic of this talk, connotes certain things. Probably the first of the thing that comes in mind are cast in tone, meaning are they unchangeable? They have not changed over the years. Second thing, if you take that notion, then it comes automatically that they are indestructible. Can caste not be destroyed? Can caste not be annihilated? There are people, and they think that even Ambedkar, despite having written Annihilation of Caste, There are people saying or arguing that he has never said anything of like that. He did not believe that caste could be annihilated. There is no argument because it's so ridiculous that there can't be any counter to that. Of course, if you read Annihilation of Caste, that text which actually he had written for speaking it out in Jatpat Todak Mandal in Lahore, he has given a comprehensive analysis. Such a comprehensive analysis that some people actually like, and it actually goes with my name, that what Communist Manifesto is to the capitalist world, Annihilation of Caste probably is the caste India. So such a comprehensive analysis is presented, and at the last, how does he end? He ends like the caste could be annihilated only the Dharma Shastras, Hindu Dharma Shastras are dynamited. That means, and he says that, oh, I don't think any Hindu would be ever prepared to do that, and that's why, as for me, I have decided to go away. So he had actually declared publicly that he would not die a Hindu and all in 1935, and that's what he refers to. This text was written in 36, just around the same time. That was his diagnosis, that caste actually are sourced from Hindu religion, and Hindu religion also he divided into two things. One is a religion of principles, and another one was a religion of rules. And he thought religion of principles meaning something like sourced from Upanishads, etc., etc., and he did not have any problem with, because it lent some like philosophical tenets to Hinduism. But he said that a caste does not really flow from that. That the caste actually flows from religious rules like Dharma Shastras, and they needed to be destroyed in order to do away with caste. All right, some people can take a meaning that he did not concretely indicate the way of annihilating caste, and his way of annihilating or something like going away from Hinduism was the way that he chose for himself. And that was anyway, after 20 years, then he converted to Buddhism, and many people believe that converting to Buddhism probably would be not annihilating but escaping from the caste bondage. All right, these two themes basically I would like to concentrate on, whether caste have been unchangeable, that means throughout history whether castes have changed or not, and second thing is that whether they can be annihilated. These are the only two things that we could probably next 30-40 minutes that we would touch upon. Now as regards change, it's very obvious. If you look at take just an overview, then you would find that there are certain castes which could not accommodate all people in the assigned kind of caste vocations. Okay, the vocation allotment, etc., is quite tangible to be seen among Dalits. The Dalits actually are allotted certain menial tasks, etc. But there are certain castes among Dalits that they do not have that caste vocation. Then what happened? If this has come into being, castes have come into being per vocation, then there should have been, everybody should have had the same vocation. But it is not to be seen in that manner. Like every populous caste among Dalits, by default, majority of them are engaged with the landless laborers. Okay? So what was their vocation? So there must have something must have happened during the history that these surplus population have accumulated in that caste. Either it is many castes merged into that and swell the numbers for this caste, or something has happened, or or certain vocations died down, and this became effectively a surplus caste. So even very superfluous view like that also can say to you that castes have not been unchanged. They have not remained unchanged. Very uh, bird's eye view kind of thing, if you look at the large macro society of India, appears to be almost stagnant. And that's what Marx referred to. That he said when in the event of something like railway network was coming, the first railway was planned in India. That time he said that because of the railway network, there would be industrialization, there would be commercialization, and all these kind of traditional impediments like caste system, etc., would be undermined. So what we see is um, oh, what we see is that overall it appeared, the Indian history appeared as something like fossilized. There was no change. It remained something like a self-contained villages. All that kind of thing appeared to outsiders. But within that, in a macro term, there has been always a change taking place. The significantly, when Muslims came here and they stabilized their kind of civilization, an Islamic civilization out here, then many changes had taken place. There was a demographic change to uh, note significantly, that something like one-fifth of Hindu population was lost to Islam. So that kind of change has come. But actually, Islamist rule brought some advanced kind of feudalism from Central Europe, and they built something like cities, etc., forts, etc. There are a lot of activities that attracted the village people, the artisan caste, etc., to those places, to execute those places. And that way, they escaped those caste bonds of village and came to towns. So these kinds of changes came, meaning in course of time, some of the people converted to Islam and some people did not. But these were the changes that had taken place. The many vocations came into being, and many vocations merged also, and many people actually left the village bounds. Significant changes started coming in when European people came here and colonized this country. So British colonialism, for instance, brought in many opportunities. They were not intended as such, but when East India company came first, so that time the people came for basically to uh, earn profit. That was a commercial organization, and to earn profit. So when 18th century these people came, that their basic motive was profiteering. But then 19th century, as they actually started winning more and more and started extending their regions, so there the bureaucracy came into being, and they started actually working on that. And there were many sort of changes which could be seen as opportunities to the low caste people came through this colonial rule. Significantly, something like employment of Dalits, etc., in East India Company, the Bhima Koregaon, which unnecessarily got very famous these days, actually is the product of that. Even Ambedkar, for instance, could be seen as a product of that. The two generations of Ambedkar, from father's and mother's side both, were actually the military, uh, were in military. And military, British people actually educated their soldiers, and because of that, all the people who went to the East India Company army, they got educated, and that actually created a miracle. Ambedkar spoke of that in his first of the speech given in Mahad, how this kind of education, military education, benefited the Mahas. So these were the kinds of changes that had come in, and in course of time, a lot of uh, job opportunities, because of the colonial expansion, there are a lot of projects that came in, and all those kinds of things actually brought in. And as we see today, the educated middle class of Dalit, that time they formed a kind of middle class in the towns and cities, and a Dalit movement could be attributed to the emergence of this kind of class. So these kind of changes have been coming constantly from medieval ages down to now. But the very significant changes, and that remains actually unnoticed, has come in during the post-colonial times. We do not see the kink in colon kink in a way that okay, there was a transfer of power, and India got independence, and that way we actually imagine the kink, but not in terms of what kinds of changes that have come in the society. There were tremendous and momentous change that has come into society after transfer of power had taken place. And what I refer to is the construction of the post-colonial state. Right from making of the constitution, there were certain things, certain shenanigans that were being enacted in this land. And that has huge implication to caste. Now everybody knows there was during the Constituent Assembly being in the session, there was they passed a resolution doing abolishing untouchability. Untouchability was abolished with a with an uproar of something like Gandhi ki jai and all that. But the castes were kept intact. That is not noticed. Okay. Now it stands to a common sense that untouchability is just an aspect of caste, and it cannot go if a caste survive. But a caste actually they made a point that caste would survive, not only survive but they would thrive. What is the pretext? Pretext was that they wanted to do social justice to these people, lower caste people. What kind of social justice? It can be answered in terms of reservation. Did Constitution give reservation? Answer is no. Reservations came from a colonial time. It is entirely credited to Baba Saheb Ambedkar that he got this reservation incorporated, meaning one from the British. Basically, it is a political reservation, and when actually Pune Pact, Gandhi wanted to annul that separate electorates, and Ambedkar had to enter into Pune Pact, and in one of the clauses in Pune Pact said that the Congress and state actually would work for the uplift of the Dalits. So that way the rest of the reservation, namely the reservation in the public employment and educational institutions, etc., actually flow from that. But basic was the political representation. Ambedkar always, right from Southborough committees, evidence, etc., he actually hankered upon the political representation, because he had turned his sights to the politics which was unfolding those days, and wanted to have an opportunity through that route, because his hopes that the advanced sections of Hindu society would come for reform actually were belied in Mahat Satyagraha. So this has happened. What were the shenanigans operated? Basically, this entire thing was adopted as such in post-colonial time, in constitution, but they had done certain mischiefs. This reservation was extended to scheduled tribe. They created a parallel schedule. It's nobody's case that scheduled tribe, those Adivasi people did not deserve it, or that's not, we are not discussing those things. They did deserve, they also could be, but there was no concrete identity for these people to be identified under a schedule. The best thing would have been, if you actually transcend that identity problem, the best thing would have been that all these people could have been merged into the same schedule, and through the same schedule actually the reservation could be extended. But no, they created a parallel kind of thing. By doing that, actually you could have diluted the stigma, social stigma associated. Nobody problematized the reservation, whatever 43, actually the quota system also came into being, but nobody, to my mind, problematized the reservations to Dalits so far, because reservation ought to be something like an exceptional policy for exceptional people, and in that spirit it was followed by most larger society. However, these parallel schedules were created and they did not take that path. They went beyond and extended it to something like a backward classes. Even the, meaning those people also were not known. Okay, who that, they said that okay, the state would undertake this exercise to identify such people who are educationally and socially backward and extend similar kind of thing to them. And then came the backward classes commission, etc. For it's not my argument that these people were not backward and all that thing, because backwardness per se did not have anything to do with reservations. Reservation policy, if you say it as public policy, it should be something like a very exceptional policy for exceptional people and should have something like a seeds of self extermination, and our things are not like that, you know. So all these kinds of turbulence created uh, the kind of caste consciousness, the strengthened the caste consciousness, and today what I said, that India is more casteized than ever before. Now next king comes in this thing is somewhere post 90s, because this 90s itself, the VP Singh came into, became a chief prime minister, and he is actually adopted the Mandal Commission recommendations and extended reservations to BCs. And then came soon thereafter the adoption of the neoliberal the economic reform. That aggravated further the, the casteization, because neoliberalization is nothing but basically a neoclassical kind of economics plus plutocratic political system and atomized individual divide of collectivity. This actually it could be understood in that frame. What happens basically is that the state starts withdrawing from its obligations toward people to provide the social services. It is actually embedded into that everything should be free market, everything should be marketized, commoditized, and whatever the state was doing, that extending something like social services like healthcare, education, etc., were acknowledged to be the job of the state to provide to the public. State started withdrawing from that state and as a result what happened was that the allocations to these kinds of activities started diminishing under the orthodoxy of this fiscal management, and people started feeling this thing, this heat of it. As you know, right from 90s, etc., it actually caused the agrarian crisis in rural India, and caste is mostly related with that. So I will not touch upon entire kind of gamut of impact it has created, but just take the things which interface caste, and you would see that it actually created a crisis in rural area, and because of that, again, the the uh, the casteization and the caste consciousness started uh, uh, getting fillip. The way it happens is that the agriculture classes, which actually were prospering during the previous decade, that means on post kind of green revolution, etc., they brought in riches, etc., I will come back to that, but there was this kind of decline, and there was a contraction of the allocation of the public investment in agriculture, public as a private investment agriculture. These things have been happening, and because of that their condition started worsening. And they would see in relation to that Dalits, in contrast to them, Dalits actually were in the government service and they started appearing. Not all the Dalits actually really got that kind of advancement, but there would always be some couple of households, etc., in villages would look better, and they started judging it and uh, feeling that these people are really getting benefit, and they would attribute it all to the to reservation, and there was a demand like that kind of created a lever for the politicians to use, and started demanding on those, the meaning creating a social turbulence, the demand for reservation. So you'd find that there is no caste today, funnily, that which actually does not require a reservation. It has come to such a fore that now even the advanced caste, the forward caste, also have been extended by Mr. Modi, this 10% reservation. So this has actually come and created such a casteization uh, through these means. So one of the things that we could see, that castes have not been stagnant. That means they are not actually unchangeable. They have been changing right from the beginning, and they have changed so much during post-colonial thing that 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 needed a note of. If one struggles again for the annihilation of caste, etc., this is very important, because still there is a tendency to see caste uh, attributed to something like that legendary Manu, okay? Or same way as Baba Sahib Ambedkar wrote that the caste actually flow from Hinduism. Today's caste, the contemporary caste that we are struggling against, are not as much ordained by the Hindu Dharma Shastras, but they are actually flowing from the constitution itself. The this is the paradoxical kind of thing. The constitution, which in public imagination aims at annihilating caste, but no, actually the caste actually are structured and shaped through the constitution. The contemporary castes are shaped like that. The ruling classes actually did these kinds of uh, intrigue just to make caste survive, and they consecrated in a way it through the constitutional clauses. This is the very systematic way it has been done. Similar thing was actually done through religion. They did not want just to touch upon, otherwise there could be a departure from our topic. Even religion, they did not want to uh, let go of. Secularism, the subcommittee of the Constituent Assembly, if you recall, had decided that India be a secular country. But none other than Nehru, who was actually heading the committee, advisory committee, said that those people who talk about secularism do not know the meaning of secularism. He did know that secularism as such could be the firewall between politics and religion, but they did not want to have. They wanted that this kind of turbulence also to survive, because these were the two kinds of weapons. They were proven weapons to divide people agenda, religion and caste. And we adopted, as the Chinese say, socialism with Chinese characteristics. So likewise, we adopted a secularism with Indian characteristic. That state will not have a religion, and with the first past the post election kind of thing, you can actually construe that state cannot be aloof from the majority religion, and that is precisely has been happening. It is not just happened now, but this has been happening all through. That basically there were seeds of this kind which actually were already there, and the operation of that was evident that state could not really keep itself aloof from religion. just for namesake, it was secular, meaning it did not have a religion per se, but the entire behavior of the state that could be seen to be favorable to majority religion. So this has been the mischievous kinds of thing that happened during the post-colonial thing and through constitution. Now, how does one aim at or think of annihilating this caste? Now, this menace has gone so deep that probably it would be really difficult. Those who are engaged and think of doing uh, such kind of thing really are puzzled. How can this be attempted? It's really a difficult question. How does it happen? Because we are actually standing at the precipice with an imminent fall into fascism. As a matter of fact, I've been saying that we experienced during last 5 years what actually fascism would be like. The Hindu Rashtra is not just a fascism, but Hindu Rashtra is fascism plus something. It is going to be much worse than we saw in Europe in 20s and 30s. It's going to be very difficult because the ruling classes here are endowed with their age-old kinds of philosophy of Brahminism. And that fascism would be actually compounded because with this kind of Brahminic attitude. So it becomes very difficult really to think of how the annihilation of caste could be imagined. What is happening during last 5 years? How does it neoliberalism did its part, and it has come to something like Hindutva wave, which actually is a byproduct of neoliberalism in one way, and something like a uh, political what would you call blunders committed by certain people in Congress. Rajiv Gandhi, for instance, if he had not really opened up the Ram Lalla temple locks, or he had not did something like somersault in Shahbano case, or declared something like he would bring in Ramarajya and started propagating Hindu kind of thing, probably this would not have given a fillip to the BJP forces, these Hindutva forces, and reached us to this kind of foe. So a lot of things are there. There are certain seeds in neoliberalism itself, which actually are really conducive to the right-wing forces, because it's not India, everywhere, almost all over the world, right-wing forces that have been actually on a rise. So these things can be very well seen, but the kind of uh, uh, calamitous thing that have happened during last 5 years are really noteworthy. In sense, these people actually started feeling there was a pact of sort, because preceding two elections, UPA 1 and UPA 2, there was a systematic drive, and Modi alongside had created his image that he can serve the global capital better than anyone else, and he convinced the global capital that they could now really switch to these meaning him as a guardian of the capital. And there has been some kind of a pact. And with that 2014, with all this kind of backing, he uh, captured the power and started feeling, because it's the first time after so many years actually got a majority, and he started feeling that now the goal is within reach. So there was something like something like there's a contradiction within that, in this plan, that if he goes very neoliberal way, which is beneficial to global capital, Actually, he hits his own constituency. But and to manage the politics, he has to actually drive it in a Hindutva way. But Hindutva way, if he drives it, it actually contradicts with the global capital with whom he had a pact. So all these contradictions can only be managed within a short time, and that's why within 5 years, almost something like a very compressed kind of plan he enacted, creating a menace to the society. Now, what kind of menace, etc., we have experienced ourselves, so we need not go into detail. So now, if he actually does not do it within the next 5 years, actually these intrinsic contradictions actually would might explode, and that is what they fear, and that's why actually they actually show the desperation of kind. So this time is something like that kind of problem that we face. Now, the attitude toward Dalit of this regime, although most of the Dalit leaders you will find in a BJP camp, they, they actually less said of these people, better it is that they still think that they could be, Congress has not done anything to them, so let us try BJP. And that kind of dictum they operate with, and they have gone and joined BJP bandwagon. But what has been the attitude of the Hindutva camp toward Dalit? They, if you see the uh, those thing by parameter of say number of atrocities, etc., the atrocities during last 5 years have gone the increase, rather in increased term, they have gone eightfold more than the previous 5 years. There have been palpable kind of impact on Dalits because of their Hindutva politics, like Ghar Wapsi or the Gaurakshak, etc. Muslims were the biggest kind of sufferers, but Dalits also they did not spare. Una is the case in point. The Kuna is not alone. There have been many cases of that kind. So these things Dalits have been suffering. Now their strategy is to rely upon the non-Ambedkarite Dalits. That it needs to be understood that if what is Ambedkarite Dalit and non-Ambedkarite Dalit needs to be understood. Ambedkarite Dalit basically are the people, the most populous caste among Dalits actually identified Ambedkar and followed Ambedkar, and rest of the people actually did not join in. So these kind of divide, like Bal Thackeray operated in Maharashtra, the same kind of strategy now BJP adopts, and they rely upon that. And they are isolating these people because their kind of arithmetic works with isolating with their politics, the polarization politics. So they exclude kind of Dalits and Muslims, etc. Their numbers, because they now homogenize the rest of the Hindus as a something like a pan-Hindu kind of constituency, and they can operate with that number. There is no evidence that this really would work fully, because last time with all their efforts they just could get 31% vote, and in this election probably not even that much. So that might not work, but that has been their strategy. So it actually is a difficult thing now to basically we'll have to contrast it how to sort of defeat these forces, firstly right wing forces, and then attempt the annihilation of caste. Now annihilation of caste could only be imagined. It's a kind of dialectical formulation that it can only be imagined if we really transcend the caste idiom. What it means is that with caste, hankering upon caste, we cannot bring all people together, even for the annihilation of caste, because caste is very unlike any other sociological category. Actually, it only knows hierarchy. Hierarchy meaning it knows only to split like amoeba. Caste is not a caste. Ambedkar imagined Dalits as a quasi-class term assimilating all untouchable castes, but it did not work. As a matter of fact, when he started a lot of, there is an entire decade and a half that he actually tried his class politics, but it did not work because he could not avoid the caste idiom, and the caste actually went on splintering. His own kind of Mahar caste, which has a 64 subcaste, and when it comes to meaning post Ambedkar politics, if you actually look at the whatever that happened to it, then you would find that there has been a split among them along the subcaste line. In 80s, there was a public board put up by this caste that we are something like a superior people. You know, as a subcaste actually flaunts its own caste. So this is the aftermath we refuse to learn from even the Ambedkar's own life or Ambedkarite movement as such. So if we really hanker upon caste, the annihilation of caste would not be really possible. The only possible thing is unless Dalit identify people of similarly placed people in the society and strategize to bring them together, until then probably this kind of movement cannot be imagined. That's the only way to do the thing, because today it was required yesterday, but today it is much more, because each caste has got a class layer, and you cannot just imagine uh, uniting people on the caste basis. They, everywhere you will go to any country, actually it comes very naturally that uh, the kind of some people coming up from the caste or race or whatever, they would take care of the rest of the people. And this was actually tried by Ambedkar in by way of reservation, but it's an empirical reality that this has not worked. This talented thesis of Du Bois, for instance, has not worked even in America and anywhere for that matter, because what we miss out is when the man actually traverses and uplifts himself in a social, economical, political way, actually his class transformation takes place, and he no more remains the same thing, and to identify with the people who have been left behind. So as a result, we'll the really challenge before the movement would be to identify friends and foes. And in order to do that, the probably class is the only way to do. Only along, if similarly placed people come together and understand that this is a menace for our unity, and our larger struggle could be articulated only by overcoming this, then only this struggle can reach the fruition. Whenever one speaks about class among Dalit circles, it actually smells of Marxism. So that again is really problematic, because normally I have been the biggest victim of that. But just saying class does not make a Marxism. Marxism is much more than that. By saying actually they reflect their ignorance about the Marxism, and simultaneously they actually betray their ignorance about the caste also. The fundamental characteristic of caste needs to be understood, that this is a thing which only knows how to split, how to divide, and never it would let you come together. I think I would stop here and by way of discussion, rest of the whatever that comes to this thing that can be dealt with. Thank you.
All yours, friends. It was nice to have Dr. Teltumbde here, and the next half an hour could be yours to pick his brain. Yes, Urvi will ask the first question.
Thank you so much for the talk, but also years of incredible work. You spoke extensively about the political past, a part of how caste is perpetuated. I was wondering, Ambedkar speaks in caste in India like a century, over a century back, about social endogamy. That is, marrying within the same caste and community. And I was wondering, to me, it seems that arranged marriage, as we call it today, is one of the most pervasive ways of how caste is perpetuated. So, and also it speaks to, as Ambedkar spoke to an annihilation, to the liberal or the rational Hindu. So, I was wondering whether you could, if your thoughts on that.
About many things at many times. So one of the things that he spoke about, that intermarriage, interdining, intermarriage, etc. Actually, intermarriage is traced more than interdining thing. Interdining, etc., where the upper caste reformers remedy, but he traced intermarriage, which actually Gandhi contradicted. Uh, Now we are in comfortable position to look back the empirical results and assess whether such kind of remedies really work. Intermarriage is okay, fine. Uh, but how do marriages take place? Unless you overcome the caste consciousness, etc., probably it would not. With the spread of education, you would find that a lot of people now marry across caste because they have overcome that, and the kind of um, attraction between persons actually is more stronger than the caste consciousness. So they overcome that and they get married. That is their decision. Parents also are liberal and they let them do that. But does it really bring in families together? It's a question mark. And many places, when repeatedly this intermarriage has been tried, the families also have come together. So I'm not denying that. But as a kind of remedy, or as a kind of what would you call, something like a measure, can it be tried to really confront caste? How many intermarriages might be taking place? And what is the basis of that? Basis of that is basically a class similarity. When people marry not because of caste, but because of this similarity of class, their standing, class standing is similar. That way only marriages take place, isn't it? Because they would not mind really of a different kind of background, and the acceptance of a bride or bridegroom or whatever also is because of that. And extended to that, to the following generation, etc., this happens. But can that be a larger thing that could be said? If you actually follow the key, that if it is a class similarity that brings in intermarriages, then probably you should work on bringing about that similarity, isn't it? It would be corollary. So that could be said about it. Now the second kind of question that you related with liberal or rational Hindu, etc., that was tried out by Ambedkar. That was his hope really in Mahad Satyagraha to start with, the first ever struggle that he launched. So there he imagined the same thing. Actually, he was imagining that these kinds of reforms could be possible if some people come forward and undertake those reforms. What happened there? It did not work. On the contrary, his people got beating in Mahad Satyagraha, and that irked him. And he came out. He actually launched the second Satyagraha. That first was not the Satyagraha, first was just a conference, and in which they were marched to the Chaudarta tank just to assert that legal right was granted to them. They wanted just to assert that right, and in the process they got beating. So honored with that, Ambedkar consciously himself planned a second big conference after 9 months and in a much bigger scale. Something like 10,000 people had congregated to that to do that satyagraha. I elaborated in my book Mahat, and in that also these Orthodox Hindus actually committed a mischief. They just before few days they got a court injunction fraudulently claiming that the Chowdhury tank was not a public tank, it was a private property, Chaudhary tank. And they said that the satyagraha cannot be performed on a private property. And that way, so these cumulated experience actually alienated Ambedkar from the social reform path, and he started looking at the politics, which, as I said earlier, was unfolding in a big way. The more Lamento reforms, etc. You might recall that Muslim League already had given a clue that tribals and Hindus were not the Hindus, tribals and Dalits were not actually the Hindus. Because on the number side, if you actually exclude the Hindu thing, then Muslim population and Hindu population would actually really little bit come to balancing out, and that was their strategy. But that was a clue enough even to Ambedkar to establish the separate political identity, and he actually traversed that path. And whatever he accomplished, actually he did it during the colonial time. It's a notable thing that taking a bird's eye view to Ambedkar's life, then one could say that whatever accomplishment Ambedkar achieved actually happened during the colonial time. And post-colonial time, after 1947, for which actually brought him a laurel of the constitution maker and a chief architect of the constitution, etc., etc. Actually, that period actually gave him a frustration and dejection. Not many people know that Babasaheb Ambedkar, as regards constitution, had disowned it in 1953, just within 2 years, that he was initially very euphoric about, because world was showering praises on him. So he was quite euphoric about that, and even exhorted his followers to follow here onward the constitutional path. But that lasted only just a couple of years, and he disowned in harshest possible terms, saying that I would be the first person to birth this constitution. You take that kind of thing and you would find that the post-colonial period rather brought him a dejection and frustration. He died a frustrated person.
రిజర్వేషన్ అడుగుతుంది అంటే ఉద్యోగాలు కావచ్చు, ఇటువంటి వాటిల్లో కాంట్రాక్టుల్లో, ఇటువంటి పెట్టుబడిదారు విధానంలో. ఇక్కడ ఏమంటే నేను చెప్పేది ఏంటంటే ఆర్థిక సమానత్వం ఉన్నప్పుడు క్వశ్చన్ అదే ఇప్పుడు ఎస్సీ ఎస్టీ ఇప్పుడు 100 రోజులు పని దినాలు కల్పించరు. అది ఎస్సీ ఎస్టీ బీసీ మైనార్టీ కుల వృత్తుల వారికి ఎంతటి లాభం అంటే ఎంతో రివల్యూషన్ వచ్చింది వాళ్ళ జీవిత విధానంలో. మన భారతదేశ ఆర్థిక విధానం వచ్చింది. ఎందుకంటే ఎండాకాలం పనిచేసేది, ఈరోజు పని చేయటం లేదు, అంత హార్డ్ వర్క్ అది. ఇవాళ నాటు వేయటం లేదు, మెషినరీ. అట్లా ఏంటంటే వాళ్ళలో చాలా మార్పు. అట్లనే రాజీవ్ గాంధీ అంటే దీనికి సార్ క్వశ్చన్ సార్ నేడు అయితే రాజీవ్ గాంధీ యొక్క 6,000 రూపాయలు మీకు అకౌంట్లో వేస్తానంటుండు. అది గొప్ప రివల్యూషన్. అది ఓటు హక్కు ఎంతో 100 రోజులు 10 దినాలు సెక్యూరిటీ ఇస్తుంది. అది కూడా అంతే. మీకు తలసరి ఆదాయం కన్నా తక్కువ ఉన్న పేదలందరికీ కూడా 6,000 రూపాయలు ఇస్తాం. అది కూడా ఒక రివల్యూషన్ ఉన్నది. అది ఓటకుతో సమానం. కానీ ఇక్కడ ఏంటంటే ఏ ఎస్టీ ఎస్సీ బీసీ మైనార్టీ కులాల వాళ్ళు కూడా ఒక స్టేట్మెంట్ కూడా ఇవ్వలేదు. థ్యాంక్స్.
No, I couldn't follow it, so I'm not in a position to translate it for you. Just a minute, please. You said, I want to understand one thing. The best way to annihilate caste would be for the low caste people to quit Hinduism and do something else. Why has this easy solution not been found acceptable to most of the Dalits? I mean, whether to become a Buddhist or an atheist or a Muslim would have been a significantly superior and easier solution than fighting the upper caste prejudices, isn't it? So why would that not?
this is precisely tried out by Baba Sahib Ambedkar himself, converting to Buddhism. And he imagined actually Buddhism was a counter to the. There are a lot of dimensions to his thing. It is not simple religious conversion as such, but religious conversion as a remedy for an caste or something like a way of annihilating caste needs to be understood in a context of history, because it is not the first time that the religious conversion had taken place. Not it might be the last rather, but the first conversion probably significantly took place, as I hinted, the 1/5 of the population, Hindu population, was lost to Islam. So that was very significant kind of conversion that had taken place. They were all lower caste people only. And then thereafter there have been a series of conversions of that kind, like Sikhs, who were majority of Sikhs, even if you count, because they are also scheduled caste. So scheduled caste actually constituted the majority of Sikhs. Okay, and thereafter even Christianity. People have been changing religion, but the castes have remained intact. As a matter of fact, the caste actually pervaded all these religions. The converted people also have been typified by caste. So they have not escaped the caste trap. So as a matter of fact, the conversion has not been any remedy. It has not done any good to the people who converted. Even Buddhists for that matter. It by default, something like in Maharashtra, the significant conversion has taken place. They are identified the same. There has not been an iota of a change that has happened. Okay, it has given little bit of cultural confidence to people that Baba Sahib Ambedkar brought in something like the legacy that he has been repeatedly saying, that untouchability originated really from the struggles of Buddhists and with Brahmins. And that kind of lineage he traced to and brought in legacy to untouchables, but this has not helped.
Yeah, you can keep this. Yeah, back up.
Yeah, are we are supposed to understand that through 1901 census, the present day untouchables were rejected to get enumerated as Hindus, followed by 1961 census or 71 census Govind Vallabh made all the tribal people part of Hindu, enumerated as Hindu religions. So in between, from 1901 census to the present day census, now the RSS exponents were saying that all the tribals are Hindus. And meanwhile, restricting scheduled caste status first to Hindu Dalits, later on extended to Sikhs, later on extended to Buddhists, and now denied scheduled caste status to Christians and Muslims, which amounts to denial of choice of religious freedom to scheduled caste people. So how could we understand all this?
I would not have a good answer to that, but something like the scheduled caste, definition of scheduled caste, etc., this has been problematic. In the first place, when they were drawing up the schedule in 1936, that was okay. Yeah. So this was exclusively only for the untouchables, and untouchable had a concrete criteria. Nobody would volunteer and say that I am a untouchable. Actually, there has been a lot of clues. While this schedule was being done by the British surveyors, they had encountered two problems. And what I am going to say has an implication to an issue of whether reservation has brought in benefits to Dalits or they have paid more cost than the benefits. The story goes like that, like this, that the surveys faced problems of enumeration in two places. One in down south and second was in east. rest of the country, they encountered something like a range of 15 to 20% Dalit population. So that was that they were satisfied with. But these people, if the untouchability was operated as a criterion, then the in South there were 70 and more people, percent people were coming and in that schedule. And if the untouchability was operated as a sole criterion, none was coming in the far east, because this touch me notism kind of untouchability was not being followed in east. And in south, as we know common by common knowledge, that there was a graded kind of untouchability, that some people were touchable or seeable with up to 10 feet or 20 feet or some such kind of thing. So there was a graded kind of untouchability being practiced in down south. So then they actually applied for this two region additional criteria. And just to make the story short, I would say that some of the castes which got or which escaped from being included in the schedule, you would find having made 1,000 times more progress than the Dalit in the same region. Now, what would you call it? This is a probably empirical kind of proof without much of belaboring that come forth, that those castes which were probably similarly placed, there could be micro kind of differences among them, but similarly placed, just by virtue of getting escaped from the schedule, could make 1,000 times more progress than the Dalit in the same region. What would you call it? Thereafter, all these kind of the kind of question that you asked, that scheduled caste stature being extended to people or now being denied to people, is just a politicking of kind that is. I don't think I can adequately answer that.
Good evening, sir. People have been seen as power seekers rather than a depressed class.
A post-colonial colonial India produced that I definitely credit with, because he concretely strategized how to give in the ruling people in their own coin. Okay. But I would not say that that's the path again to annihilation. Okay, that perhaps has contributed to strengthening the caste identities. And Kashiram's point was, I had a good fortune of discussing it intimately, person to person. So it's something like he believed in that जैसे काटे का काटा निकालता है, उसी तरह कास्ट को strengthen करने से कास्ट का annihilation भी करेंगे. Okay, but if you will minutely look at how this entire episode worked was, and it seemed to work only in UP, nowhere else. It did not work in Punjab, where where the scheduled caste population is actually maximum, and it did not work. And Ashiram incidentally comes from Punjab. Still, it did not work there. It did not work in Maharashtra, where entire ideology and organization actually was seeded for him. Both places it did not work. It worked in unlikely place like UP. Responsible factors for that was basically a demography of Dalits. There is a Jatau Chamars, which actually constitutes solid 19%, up to 18-19% of the population, can be a very solid block. There is no contradiction, unlike any other state, in this populous caste. So that worked for him. It worked for him that it had a history of Ambedkarite movement. There is a palpable, strong history of Ambedkarite movement there, and which actually had kind of lull because of the major leaders going over to and joining Congress and BJP, that time Jan Sangh perhaps, respectively. So these kinds of factors actually helped bring him and brought success to Kashiram's experiment. But certainly I would say, as a person, you could pardon me, but I would say that that's not a path to annihilation. It has not taken us any inch forward toward in that path. certainly it has brought power to Dalit, it has got sense of power to Dalit, but provided you actually balance out that acrobatics, electoral acrobatics, and that acrobatics could be detrimental to Dalit, because if you are not in power, then increasingly what happened was the Jato Chamas became a captive kind of constituency for ESP, because they do know that that has not brought in real power in their hands, but uh, if they are away from power, then they will really face the repercussions from the upper caste. And because of that, they would keep on voting. That they are forced to vote for BSP election after elections. So this is the kind of thing. Now it is, yes, it's not a notion to even the lowliest of the lowly that they are a powerful caste and that they can enjoy that identity thing. But in real terms, really not.
Anand Teltumbde ji, I have heard number of his speeches. I have gone through his books. He very often comments on supporting Marxism. But ever since communism has come into this country, it could not find any solution to the caste system. So also in the present comment that Islam has also not solved the problem of caste, Sikhism as well as Christianity, his comments are. And ultimately, Baba Sahib's conversion also did not get any result. But I do not know. People who have gone towards Islam, they are living respectfully. People who have gone to Sikhism also, they are living respectfully. Those who have left the Hindu religion, they are living respectfully. Can't we expect that Baba Sahib's conversion is a way leading towards respect? I need some more comments from you. Thank you.
What the word used, respect, was it? Respect, no? Yeah. Firstly, let me dispel that notion that I have been a Marxist or some such thing. I've been using the class politics. That does not necessarily mean Marx. Okay. Maybe I have myself not actually called myself anything, and I even publicly speak and write that probably it is not acceptable to me, because as I see, I have my own rationale that the world is changing with such a pace that nothing that worked in the past can be replicated to my world. And because of that, I avoid calling by some XYZ ideology. So that thing, that apart. As regard the question that you raised about the conversions, etc., yes, actually Baba Sahib Ambedkar had a lot of strands to the conversion to Buddhism. It is not just going away from Hinduism and and accepting some other religion. It was not that. I think you very well know that. Ambedkar saw in Buddhism that this is the one religion and not the conventional religion. He did not imagine again Buddhism in a conventional way, that given religion he had to really carve out, which was not palatable even to the Buddhists of those times. And they said that it is not a Buddha's religion, but it's an Ambedkar's Buddhism. Okay, that kind of comments came in. That apart, Ambedkar imagined that this is the most rational and most scientific religion which is compatible to modern era, and that's why he actually accepted it. And his motto was, our modest expectation was that his followers, that not everybody would really go after him, but his followers would carry on the movement as a Prabuddha, as a collective of Prabuddha people, that is enlightened people. Now, pertinent question to be asked is respect, etc. is a mental kind of responses. One could feel respected anyway, and many people derive being Hindu probably that could be said like this. But the most pertinent question is that whether really we have followed in footsteps of Ambedkar. Did we try an inch toward being an enlightened person? My answer would be, I would not dare say that in affirmative, okay? Because people have built viharas, people started copying something like, if this Hindus actually do long prayers, we also should do a little longer than that. That kind of competition has set in among the convert Buddhists. So this is not the way. If we had carried on with enlightened, as an enlightened being, it would have been a bit different. Enlightened being meaning something like we could have questioned things of the past. This is the way of science. Baba Sahib spoke about science, okay? And is what the way of pragmatism. Pragmatism also originated something like as a way of science, questioning what is the data that actually leading to certain ways and adopting that path without any reservation. This is the way of the enlightenment. And I don't think we have done that.
Good. I have a question. Many months ago, there was someone who was standing here and he said that it is technology which will destroy the caste system more than anything else in this century. And he had many reasons for it, but I want your reaction on that.
Is bringing me closer to big data. This again is a notion because empirically, if you look at the IT crowd, for instance, like I was heading information technology and was credited with something like one who contributed India's IT among something like top 20%, top 20 people. I was counted for consecutive 3 years among them. So I have seen this crowd from closer angle. Again, it could be said the same thing, like the people who are in IITs and study science, technology, etc., might not believe in such kind of nonsense, okay? But no, the empirical thing is unfortunately very reverse. Let me say, when I was in IIT Kharagpur, before this, for 5.5 years, during my time, the 60th year of the first IIT, biggest IIT, IIT Kharagpur, was celebrated. And the program, concluding program was such, scripted by one professor and enacted by all kids and families of professors, faculty and staff, was such that everything originated in India and our entire world has stolen our things from here. So this was the dictum. Then there is something like, while I was there was 154th lecture on some occult thing like Vedic science. Kharagpur IIT pioneered every branch of science and technology in this country, and it has recently started during the last 5 years a center for promotion of this Vedic technology, etc. None other than the director actually lectures in that. So don't expect any thing that the technology brings in, because these people become rather very socially insulated people and deal with that. Now, the kind of technologies that are in offering, something like a big data technologies, etc., that means I think more familiar world would be artificial intelligence, neural networks and things like that. Coming from that family, it's creating a dangerous world. It's a world of extreme empiricism. Just to make it simple, something like that, this is the data. Now data, where is the data? Data comes from past. So this past is extrapolated when they giving a direction to the future. That I derive the insight from the data and construct the future. So something like if you take a survey of India and take a static kind of picture of the people which are analog of data, then what would that data say? That data say that the people believe in casteism. The survey after survey actually established that. So there is nothing, I have not gone elaborate way in my first presentation for fear of time. But this has been the data now. So if you derive that kind of thing, it would naturally come that most of the people are, it's a popular feel that there is nothing wrong with believing in casteism, and then extrapolate it. So it's not automatic that the technology people, etc., would really overcome caste or these kinds of consciousness. Reverse rather is more true.
Pressure on the Indian community, Indian government, the political system to bring changes in the present social system, because global pressure and the countries who are liberal and strong enough to make some changes here. Is it possible? I mean,
answer probably could be given like that. We are not an isolated anymore, but all these problems are significantly faced by us in our locality. That is also equally true. So to the extent that there is a global interface to that, the people have been striving. Like there is a Dalit diaspora, there is a global movement also, which actually is bringing in awareness in other societies and countries about what is happening in India, and that is creating a back pressure, certainly so. But the battle will have to be fought on several fronts together. Okay, so not to sort of just select that, okay, this could be therefore globalized and this movement could be globalized, and that might really work. It may not be like that, but significantly problem is faced here. Problem is faced really in rural India, and that we'll have to apply that solution to that locale. Okay. Problematizing caste, etc., global level, this has been happening, and it's not sans result. There is a back pressure when you take these issues, like in Durban, that conference happened. The NGOs came together and problematized that even the caste is a race and should be taken cognizance of, and the government had to run here and there, and they kind of avoided they succeeded in thwarting that, but that was a success of sort, and this can be said to the credit of a global movement.
Into the mic.
Yes, sir. Would you please elaborately tell the definition of Dalit? And elaborately define the Brahminical attitude also.
It's been fact that Dalit was an assemblage of untouchable caste. Classically, you want to interrupt?
Sir, my question is related to Dalit.
Yes, sir. Hello, Babu. I am 67 years old. I am sorry. I am taking the liberty. Please, your tag of Dalit, how it can be removed? Is it the question? Dalit tag. Yes, sir. Dalit tag, not his tag. Dalit tag, how it can be removed? I will tell you, Baba Sahib, Dr. Ambedkar has given. Can you give me the slip, sir? Please. He has given, organized. No, sir. I will talk to you. We will not enter, sir. Organize, educate. Yes, sir. Organize, educate, agitate. You agitate like this in each and every meeting, influence the people at the top level, political level, it will be attended to. I am a Dalit. It will be attended to. Ask question. Only one question. Till throughout the lifetime, it will be eradicated. Don't think Dalit is supreme. Dalit, Dalit is supreme.
Sit down.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sir, my question is related to constitution in the context of the Muslims. Muslims have lost their reservation, irresistible reservation, after the constitution.
You might have taken a sense from what I've said so far. This reservation comes from something like an African American articulated in very nice way, talented 10. W.B. Du Bois was his name, and he said the talented 10. That means something like a forward elements of a community, identified as a community, come forward, they would take care of, or they would act as an umbrella for rest of the people, unsheltered people. Right? This is the sense anywhere, whosoever has really implemented affirmative action, whether it is politics, education, public employment, and so on and so forth. But this has always come in that form. This expectation, I just briefly said, did not seem to work. And the missing point is, in the assumption is that during the transformation, okay, as he actually becomes 10 out of that talented 10, one of that talented 10, as he comes up, he forgets by his class transformation the rest of the people. And this has been happening repeatedly. The Dalit IAS, Dalit IPS, or the bureaucrats, etc., or minister, chief minister, Dalits have produced everybody. Incidentally, today the Dalit president is there now. So what way he is acting, or what way he is taking care of the Dalits who have been left behind? You would not find an iota of that. You would not find an iota of that. It's okay. You can I would go to the extent, because I also, in class terms, I belong to the same class. And I see these people from very closer angle. I have already seen them. My observation is that sometimes the upper caste fellow might be more beneficial to Dalit than these people have been. So this is the paradoxical thing. And now somewhere we ought to conclude, okay, that this does not work that way. So these are all matters of detail that Muslims where meaning the reservation was stopped after constitution, etc., etc. There lot of intrigues are there, and there is this actually opens up a plethora of opportunity for the people to dig into the constitution, because all our researches, etc., are of I don't know, I get amazed, because that's not my subject as such, and I would not harshly comment on that. But these are the kind of things that our intellectuals should have brought forth to the people, that what kind of shenanigans have gone into the making of constitution or construction or constitutional state, right? So, but this is not done by anyone, and I am the most unlikely person to speak this language.
I think
one small question. When caste is losing its ground from the production level, when the caste is losing...
Classical caste system has been different from the contemporary caste. Just to elaborate, I would say that caste as a system has died, and caste as a consciousness is on rise. Okay, this has been happening. That's the characteristics of the contemporary caste system. So now actually caste as a system, that means system was actually linked with the production. So that has been divorced, largely divorced, okay. But it's in the interest of the ruling classes all the same to sustain this kind of consciousness, because this is what it is. In one way, I have not elaborated in my speech per se. Again, there are a lot of things to be said. Contemporary caste, how do you define? Now, contemporary caste is not the same as Baba Saheb, for instance, saw in 1920s, like a graded hierarchy. It's not like that. Actually, Phule predated Ambedkar, but Phule actually saw that bipolar kind of division of Indian society, because if you want to see pitch one against another, in something like class struggle, so you have to conceive something like in two parts. And Phule did it. Okay, Phule did it. He is the first person to identify and theorize that bipolar kind of division of Indian society, Stri, Shudra, Ati Shudra, in one way, one side, and the rest of them, that Dvija, Varna, etc., other side. So that kind of system. So, like, I would liken that to the contemporary caste system, say that actually it's a division between Dalits and non-Dalits. Okay, this is the kind of illusion then it creates, that Modi, when he claims that he is a backward caste person, and many people, because that Bahujan definition actually includes those kind of things, so he becomes automatic friend of them. And people lament, oh, being even a part of Bahujan, he is not behaving as one. No, he is destined to not behave as one. Okay, so there is no lament required.
Hello, sir. Actually, my question is more of an understanding basis. In your talk, you brought a very interesting insight that the old view of caste was much of Manu based and the new contemporary view of caste is constitution based. Now, thinking about Article 14 that gives equality on the basis of everything, can you give me any data or empirical evidences where it proves that the casteism today is increasing due to constitution?
Just hinted it already. Hinted it something like a reservation of the reservation or the social justice measure. Okay, as it originated. But thereafter, post-colonial thing, which were the Brahmanic ruling classes, actually weaponized it, and reservation made into a weapon in their hands. And what way? I already said that they extended it to tribals, extended it to BCs, now BCs. Something like the criteria was their community or whatever should be educationally, socially backward. Now this backwardness sense in a backward country like India, which can be totally taken as a backward in Committee of Nations, if you look at even after 70 years, we actually constitute very well a bottom, bottom in the world, okay, in terms of development, etc. What would you call yourself as a backward country? In the backward country, how do you define or isolate something like a people on the criteria of backwardness? Educational or social backwardness is not different from the overall backwardness. It's a part of that backwardness. Then how do you really isolate? This was the mischief with which actually it got casteized. Okay, that caste consciousness, as it happened when this. It is very interesting when VP Singh actually adopted this reservation. That time, the most enthusiastic fellows going onto the street were Dalits. That they thought that their constitution will be increased because of the inclusion of these BCs, etc., which is actually most populous segment of the population. And they got beating from the people who were actually the beneficiaries. They did not know even that they were getting the reservation. They were going to be beneficiaries. So these are the kind of paradoxes of caste, the way it operates.
The last question, sir.
Sir, the growth has to become on its own. I would like to ask you, out of 100 leaders who are asking the government for the benefits for the lower class people, how many of them have tried their best to improve the intellectual caliber and also various developments? I could see only 5%. And one more thing, we are giving silver plate. In what way they will work hard to get? You can see in Delhi, the Dalits are equal to further class people in intelligence and all. If we can see, they will get, government has given everything. If you go to government hospital, nobody goes to government hospital. I cannot openly say, according to me, if you remove the reservation, the Dalits will be more fast in progress, according to me. Thank you.
I guess so. You see, no, it's, it might be found funnier, but it's not so. Because some way, if it had been operated like self-exterminating and the policy had been formulated in a way that it was not self-perpetuating, probably it would have really benefited. And as I use the word self-exterminating. That means such kind of exceptional policies also should have seen to exterminate it itself. Now, while I speak, it is not the language of the Hindutva, because there would be, again, anti-reservationist people probably would be speaking like that. But they come, where they come from, that needs to be distinguished. Okay, I take Kajal for Dalit and speak this. Well, no, neither I am, that's why I was stressing. But problem is that you see there is self-perpetuation actually alludes that there is genetically wrong with certain sets of people, which is wrong. Now, there is no need of argument in this, because Dalits have been proving. Now, it's not just, I am not going to take a case of standing first in IAS, etc. In my time, we have been standing first as a matter of fact with the first generation of Dalits, etc. So there is nothing big about it. People, all children born, healthy children coming to the world are of equal caliber. All that makes a difference is the kind of input they receive. And that's why the basic input, to just make it simple, is education, equal quality education, being provided free by the state, the basic health care, and the security of livelihood. There should not be an anxiety of living per se. If these things have been taken care by the state, then definitely it will learn. After doing this, only the reservation comes into picture. If at all, if it is necessary, consciously you think that there will be some historical lag associated with certain people, then probably you extend them this kind of measure, like reservation or affirmative action. But without doing certain thing, fundamental thing, if you create a superstructure on a the dunghill, that would not last. And this is precisely has been happening.